we're moving towards more of a zero touch recruiting in that space. Machine identifies screens and schedules, does that stuff. Humans enter the process, and they'll do a decision-making check and have final negotiation, those kinds of things. If a recruiter is still manually screening resumes in 2028, I don't know, that company won't exist very long. If you're in talent right now, there's more headcount coming your way. That's my really big prediction. Like the talent, performance development, learning and development, and compensation will grow in headcount. HR generalists will shrink to next to nothing. I would have to say that the skills that I rely on the most every day, over and over, are the skills that I built as a touring musician, by far. I mean, it's not. I don't even think it's even close. The skills that you learn, improvisation and performance and working with others, orchestrating your skills to align with others so that you are in sort of that state of harmony and working through conflict and collaboration and creative. I mean, being a musician is by far my greatest achievement in terms of the skills that I built that I use, 50 years later. So, and this is where I would say,
how do being a rock musician with your own band, being a pilot, and being in the restaurant business lead to HR technology? And why are these capabilities actually just right to prepare you for a role as HR Technology Strategist? Welcome to another Employee Experience Labs podcast from the Munich Podcast studio. Employee Experience Labs podcasts are about HR tech, employee experience, shared services, and other interesting topics around HR at the workplace. Today's episode is in addition to our Startup and AI series we are running. It is less startup and more AI. But the company we are talking about is still highly innovative and feels often like a startup. I had the pleasure to talk to Cliff, Vice President Global Strategy, General Manager CAB and Futurist at Phenom, a company that is at the forefront of talent technology, especially talent acquisition. Cliff and I have talked about his past experience and how they formed his today's thinking, and of course, we have talked about Phenom. The deepest, though, we went on AI and what it will mean for HR tech, but also for employees and talent acquisition as a whole. Cliff shared some spicy views and paints a truly exciting future. But why am I telling you this? Listen for yourself. Cliff, Vice President Global Strategy, General Manager CAB, and Futurist at Phenom. Hello, Cliff. It's so great to see you. I'm really excited to have you on today, not only because we are talking about a very important and really up-to-date topic today, but also because I love to talk to you about it, and we wanted to do this for a longer time already. And unfortunately, we are both, actually, you are more busy, and we get to this in a second, more busy than I am. But hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, Volker. Thank you so much for having me. I don't think it's true that I'm more busy. I think we could probably compete for who's the busiest, but here we are.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at least I just have like one job, and we go into it in a second. But before we go there, Cliff, I know you, of course. We know each other for some time, and we had a few conversations already offline, if you will. But for the audience, who was Cliff?
Yeah.
What's your background? What have you done before where you are today, and how did you land where you are today? Tell us a bit about yourself, Cliff.
It's funny you say land, because one of my sort of backgrounds is that I'm a pilot of 20 years or so. So I guess I would say this, like I'm a strategist who took the scenic route to HR technologies. So before Phenom,
Ooh,
I was
very
a
nice.
musician. I owned a restaurant for a while. The aforementioned being a pilot, I owned 2 companies in my previous lives. But people ask me what that has to all do with software, and the answer is it's everything, right? So, you think about music, it's about harmony, timing, precision, performance. Being in the restaurant business was all about supply and demand and immediate feedback under pressure and Flying, of course, and being a pilot is all about resource management and understanding,
Mm.
the rules of engagement and dealing with high pressure situations. Because I once had an engine out at 7,000 feet, 3, 4 years
Ouch.
ago. Yeah, so it's all really interesting in how you handle that. And
Mm.
it's, that feedback that you get, sort of immediate self feedback and realization of where you are and how to work in the moment, which is really important. So I brought that operator mentality into technology, and I don't care about the branding and all the corporate fluff and things like that. I really care about the actual capability and the human
Yeah.
impact of the systems that we
Mm.
build. And as you know, as we've worked together for a little while now, I am really focused on how we inspire people to be the best version of themselves.
Amazing. I mean, this was indeed a scenic route.
Yeah.
Indeed, a very scenic route. It's it's. I think I never had someone on with such a varied background that really rounds up. What I mean, you already shared a bit. What would you say is from your previous jobs the one that is most relevant for what you're doing now? Is it the restaurant and the in the moment? Is it the charting the course and then
Yeah.
the rules of engagement? What is it? What is that you use most?
I would have to say that the skills that I rely on the most every day, over and over, are the skills that I built as a touring musician, by far. I mean, it's not I don't
Mm.
even think it's even close. Although I've had some really interesting situations in the restaurant business and obviously being a pilot, for 2 decades now, I can point to specific situations where those skills have
Yeah,
come in handy. It's certainly, dug deep and was able to rely on those things, but the
yeah.
everyday piece of it is, I toured with, in my band in late '80s and early '90s, toured with Judas Priest and Motley Crue and
Mm.
Cinderella, and, you could sort of go that metal route, Poison, um, and these were, like, musicians at literally the top of their game. I was fortunate to
Yeah,
be in that mix of them. I don't know
yeah,
that I ever achieved that level. I sort of wanted to, but then I became a father, a husband and father early in life at 23 years old, and duty
wow.
called, and
Mhm.
I wanted to be home, with my
Mhm.
family, and so I stopped touring. I'm still a musician. I still have a music student house, the piano sitting behind me. You can't see the guitars on the wall. Music is an everyday thing for me. The skills that you learn, improvisation and performance and working with others, orchestrating your skills to align with
Yeah,
others so that you are
yeah,
in sort of that state of harmony and working through
yeah.
conflict and collaboration and creative. I mean, being a musician is by far my greatest achievement in terms of the skills that I built that I use, 50 years later. So, and this is where I would say one little note
Amazing.
about learning and about schooling and what we see around the world. We're starting
Yeah.
to see the arts make a very, very strong comeback, especially here in the United States, where it was kind of, suppressed a little bit and even canceled in a lot of big budgets and No Child Left Behind
Mhm.
and, teaching to the test, and we're starting to see that come back, and I'm really happy about that, and so I think if you're out there and for you yourself or, if you are a parent of any age children, get them involved with the arts because those
Yeah.
skills take people a really, really long way.
Honestly, Cliff, we are just a few minutes in. These are fantastic final words, but we can't
Right,
stop here.
right.
We need to continue.
Let's go.
Uh, let's go there. So, let's talk a bit about where you are today.
Sure.
And I need to read this because that's it's a handful. You are the vice president, global strategy, general manager CAP, and futurist at Phenom. What does that mean? Is it three jobs? Is it one job? Tell me.
So I hate that I have a really long job title, but the reason that I do is because it is, I view it as one job with 3 distinct lenses, and
Mm.
I'll play that role, and obviously, I met you as you onboarded as a client, and you sit on my customer advisory board here at Phenom, and so depending on the audience that I'm talking to and the role within that audience, I will mentally switch those gears because being a
Mhm.
futurist is very different than being a strategist. A strategist is more practical.
Mhm.
How do we use what we have in a really
Yeah.
meaningful way to drive outcomes?
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
futurist is, what's coming? And sort
It's
of
coming
the
next.
general manager of
Mm.
CAB is like, how do I mean, you sit in a really exclusive group here at Phenom. There's about 80 of you, high level, really skilled executives that are helping us shape the future of not only Phenom, but the HR tech and the talent
Mm.
domain in itself. You guys are a handful, let me tell you. I mean, you're all type A personalities. You all have opinions. So that's a different skill set. Like, how do I manage that in a way
Mm.
where the most important thing about CAB is, you networking with other colleagues and learning and understanding and
Yeah.
sharing. And then what can we draw out of you and collaborate and
Mm.
co-build together? We have to do that in a way where everyone feels like they're gaining something from that relationship. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's that, and it's, how do we listen to the market's smartest people? The futurist piece is what happens when we actually get there, like, so planning for it. It's about ensuring that what we build today doesn't become like technical debt or a moral hazard tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, I'm here to kind of bridge that gap between today's reality and tomorrow's necessity.
Very nice. Thanks, Cliff. And while we are on it, let's talk a bit about product. Let's talk a bit about Phenom. Um, you, you, you know, I think there's a there's a lot that is happening currently in that space. Particularly, and for those of you who don't know, Phenom is particularly in the talent space, supporting with the technology. But um, maybe talk a bit about this, Cliff. Talk a bit about Phenom, what it offers, what it brings, what's the what's the compelling value proposition of Phenom.
Sure. So, Phenom we are in our 15th year. So I think officially we can say we're not a startup anymore. I forget what the
Oh,
threshold
I
is,
think
but
so.
it's
With 15 years, I think so.
it's a little bit longer than it normally was. But here's how I would describe it. Phenom is an applied AI platform. But if you strip away all the marketing, we're a nervous system for a company's talent. Like what we've built
Hmm.
in the industry, it's the only end-to-end AI infrastructure specifically for HR. Powered by
Hmm.
engines that harmonize data. We have ontologies that guide and give direction. Agents that work alongside the team. We're moving the industry away from AI in theory to AI in practice. And so I think
Practice.
that's a
Hmm.
really great way to describe what we do. But we're solving. There's this nightmare, right? Of these talent gaps and really understanding how to truly meet someone where they are in this space, everywhere from a candidate to a recruiter to hiring managers and leaders within an organization, understanding that entire talent ecosystem and not giving them a single path to engage with that, like meet them where they are. And that's challenging.
Hmm.
But really understanding that entire life cycle, automating it, personalizing it, and I would say amplifying the human value in each of those engagements. So this isn't about AI, taking over someone's job. It's really taking away things that are uh, disenfranchising them from building a relationship, which is what this is all the whole HR space and especially talent is all about. So that's what we do. It's an amplification of human value through the use of technology.
Very nice. Thanks, Cliff. I think this is particularly the talent space is currently, from a technology perspective, more busy than many of the other spaces, um, and particularly interesting at this moment in time. When you when you look into maybe the next few days, months around that talent space and technology, what do you see happening? Are there any shifts? Are we staying on course, where how we've been for the last year or so? Or what do you see currently in that space?
Yeah, I mean, the activity in this space, I can't think of a more active domain,
Mm.
HR and HR technology. I see the biggest shift really is a move from transactional to intentional.
Mm.
And so for decades, HR was really the technology side of it was really just a digital filing cabinet, right? So, and
Yeah.
I beat up on ATSs and HCMs a little bit, and but I give them some breathing room because when you're an enterprise level system, you can't expect them to move at market speed.
Yeah.
These are monolithic systems
Yeah.
that perform really complex operational tasks for organizations. So it takes them a little bit of time to adapt. But the challenge
Mhm.
really is they are transactional. They're not really designed to understand the dynamic nature of the relationship and talent. So that is changing, right? Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so if you think of an ATS, the job title is dying and skill is really the new currency, right?
Mm.
So we're still moving towards that. And if you want, or if you aren't orienting your technology around what people can do rather than what they were called or their last job, then you're starting to become obsolete. And that's the huge shift, right? So we're moving
Mhm.
towards skills-based economy where transparency around these technologies and fit are dictated by data, not intuition, but allowing the human
Mm.
beings to like be firmly and squarely in the decision-making role with that
Mhm.
new layer of intelligence and automation and personalization that wasn't available before. So it
Yeah.
changes the entire dynamic, right? Again, that
Yeah.
moving from transactional
Yeah.
to more intentional.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. There's a lot in there, but let me maybe dive into a bit from the skills perspective. I vividly remember 4 years ago, I was sitting in an auditorium, and on the stage was Josh Bersin, who talked about the skills based organization. Um, I I hear you all around. We shouldn't judge, and we are going too short if we judge people by their job title, by their role title, or I don't know, by the university they have acquired their certifications, but by skills and what they can do. However, um, when I look into the applied talent market in many of the companies and peers that I talk with, they're struggling with moving to skills,
Yep.
and they're struggling for some time already. Um, how do you see this, and what is it? What's the trick to make it happen?
So, all right. So here's what we have to think about. And I've been talking about this for over 2 years. You've seen me present on this, what I'm about to talk about. We have to go to the core of why the move to skills based is so difficult. The first, the
Mm,
aforementioned HCMs and ATSs, they're not designed to be skills based. They're designed to
mm,
be job title, job description,
mm, mm,
the
mm,
salary bands, right? Those kinds of things.
mm,
These are what I call industrial age infrastructure. And it's dying in real time. It's going to take some time before we completely transform it. But if you think here would be the question, rhetorical question for your audience. If you were building a company today from the ground up, would you design it the way that most companies are designed today?
hmm.
The answer is unequivocally no. I mean, you might find somebody that goes, "Yeah, because it's what I know." But the
Yeah, well, you
reality
always have.
is
Yes.
that you wouldn't design it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't design it with all these silos. You wouldn't design it to
Yeah.
be so static.
Mm,
The most difficult thing that organizations are faced with is the market and technology moves far faster than they're able to adjust. They want to adjust. When you think about gig work in organizations.
mhm,
How do you describe it,
mhm,
right? But I go to something even more basic. How do you pay for it? Your payroll
mhm,
system, your
mhm,
performance management systems aren't designed to understand the infrastructure of gig work. It's very, very difficult. And so you think about something that I've been talking about for a while. You start with the job description, throw it away. Job
mhm,
descriptions suck. Nobody does them right. They don't really describe work. In fact, Deloitte came out with a really great study. They've done it 2 years in a row now. And I'm waiting for the next version of it come March, April of this year, where they say 71% of the work in all job descriptions is done
yeah.
outside the job description, which means it's inaccurate.
71%.
So
Wow.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I would say move more towards what I've been calling the work blueprint. Y'all can look it up on my LinkedIn profile. I've published a lot about this. But really what a work blueprint is, it's looking at skills, proficiency levels of those skills, and outcomes that those skills can drive in organizations. What does the organization expect? And then asking the
Yeah.
person to demonstrate through their experience how they've met some of those outcomes to prove their proficiency levels. See, the problem is you look at LinkedIn as an example, and I love LinkedIn. I think it's one of the best professional social platforms out there. But it has a problem that anyone can add a skill to your profile.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
complete bullshit.
It's a
Um,
complete inflation of
it's
skills.
totally what I would rather see, and I'm actually building a system right now. It's a prototype to prove out a theory, right? So it's just
Mhm.
conceptual, but it's myblueprint.work if you want to look at it. It's something I'm advocating here for Phenom, that we're kind of looking at. But it's my way of advancing this conversation. I'd rather know and hear from someone about their outcomes because outcomes can verify the skill. All we have right now is I have a skill, I raise my hand, I have this set of skills, but even your experience doesn't necessarily verify it, but outcomes do. I use this skill
Yeah. Yeah.
for this outcome. So I'm building a
True.
system that actually does this. We're considering this kind of stuff at Phenom to think about how do we close that gap. Once you close that gap with what I call a work blueprint, and you can have a work blueprint today without changing your HCM or ATS. You have to
Mhm.
rewrite
Mhm.
it, right? And I actually have a tool that does it,
Mhm.
but it's not very hard. Again, if you look me up on LinkedIn, I show an example of the work blueprint. You can take a current job description, run it through a quick algorithm. It can essentially reformat, and using
Mhm.
some organizational data, have some outcomes that the organization might be looking for. Tweak that a little bit, and you've completely transformed how you match people
Mhm.
to the meaningful work in your organization with real values that you can track. Imagine managing performance based on proficiency levels that are actually verified for the 10 to 15 skills that you're going to use every day in a particular role, right? That's
Yeah.
blueprinting. It's very,
Yeah.
very different. So I can't get deeply into it here just because of time, but look at my blueprint dot work, and you get an example of it. I have a really fun
Yeah.
way of demonstrating what blueprints can look like, but that's sort of the idea of what we're working on here at Phenom.
Brilliant. I will definitely link to both your LinkedIn profile and the blueprint in the show notes, so everyone can have a look into that. It's brilliant. Um, let's pivot a bit, Cliff. Let's pivot a bit to talk about AI, right? We already started talking about AI, and of course, there's no way around it, particularly also in the talent space. I think we can easily say we are in the age of AI, and that age will revolutionize many different areas, and we will not get out of this at all. Um, but how do you personally think about AI? Is it a feature? Is it a product? Is it a tool? How do you think about
Yeah.
AI?
Boy, that is, I think, the question of the age right now, because I don't think it's any of those.
Mm.
But I understand why people are looking for a label that actually works. Here's what I would say: we're in this sort of fundamental shift in the interface between humans and machines. And calling
Yeah,
AI a feature is like calling electricity a feature of a factory, right? Um, it's it's a new substrate, right? A Phenom,
yeah,
I
yeah.
would say we think of it as, instead of calling AI artificial intelligence, call it applied intelligence.
Mhm,
It's not
mhm.
about the vibe of AI. It's more about the proof, right? Like reducing time to fill, or saving thousands of hours for recruiters. If it isn't applied to a specific friction point,
Yeah,
it's
the
just
specific problem.
noise. Yeah.
Yeah,
So and that's the difference.
yeah,
Like applied AI, the power of applied AI is that you can do it at a persona and use case level, right? So I can look at a recruiter who's trying to do more screening of candidates, and I can create a tool for that really
yeah,
specific use case. So applied
yeah.
AI allows us, and applied intelligence allows us to experiment, and then we can have an experience and we can drive an outcome. And that's sort of the
Mhm.
equation of all of that.
And it is you can apply it across the complete, like, life cycle, the complete experience cycle of any technology, right? You can, I think you said in the beginning, right? It's a new way of an interface, but it's a new engine to run through, and it also helps you interpret and format stuff at the end of it. So it is truly like like electricity. It from the beginning to the end, it powers everything.
Yep. I think of when people interface with artificial intelligence today, and I do this for myself. I call it the 3 C's. Be curious, be creative, and then curate. And sort of
Hmm.
that's that my own personal equation for how I interface with the technologies. I'm curious. I want to solve something or I want to investigate something. I start interfacing with right now Claude is and Replit are my two favorite platforms. I've been vibe coding a lot, but Claude is my favorite. I think Anthropic's Claude is a really strong model. Gemini
Yeah.
3 Pro is really strong. I'm not a big fan of ChatGPT or Copilot, but they all have their benefits. I'm not knocking them. Just for what I use, I think it's better. So
Yeah.
you're curious, and then you ask it to start creating something with you, and then you curate
Mm.
that. Like my time to production to build intelligence and strategy reports and vibe code a tool that will help me do some things and gather. Like it's amazing how much work I can get done in
Yeah.
a 35, 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
I'm doing probably 3 to 5 times what I did a year ago in the same amount
Yeah.
of hours. And the quality of my output, my own human value in the organization, because the curation piece is the most important. These tools aren't replacing your thinking. They should be amplifying that. Like if you're using them again in that
Mm.
equation, curiosity, creativity, curation,
Yeah.
you're learning a whole lot more, a lot faster, and you're able to question and interrogate your own ideas before you
Mm.
take them to market, before you take them to other
Mm.
people, and it makes you sharper and it makes you
Yeah.
more focused. And that's what's really
Yeah.
important about these tools if you're looking at them through the right lens. And see, I just called it a tool, right? Applied intelligence. Like it's really hard to fundamentally um, qualify and
Yeah.
quantify what this is in a way that even resonates with me, a person that uses them every day. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I look at it.
Yeah. It's very similar. I had my year-end podcast that I had with Gogo from Google.
Yep.
It's very similar, right? She said something similar around the lines of, "Hey, use it to just amplify your output, but never have those AI tools. I use tools now as well. Um, take over the thinking and the decision from you. They are for helping, not to take the decision or to take the thinking of you.
Yep.
I think that's very important to always keep in mind, because it is very easy to not do that, right? Those AI tools, particularly generative AI, can be extremely eloquent,
Mhm.
and the more eloquent, that's how I feel. The more eloquent it is in giving you an answer, the less you have the you feel the need to deeply interrogate this and think it through from your own perspective one more time, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. I think you have to center yourself as you're using and recenter yourself as you're using these
Yeah.
technologies. And that's such an important, like I said, when I'm interfacing with artificial intelligence right now, I am constantly asking it to challenge the way that I think. Literally saying that,
Mm.
like, I don't know that I'm right. Like, let's debate this and go find evidence and go, find data and help me
Yeah.
draw the actual line between X and Y so that I'm confident what I'm saying is true.
Yep.
And there's people talk about hallucinations and things like that. And there's certainly some of that happening, but it's actually kind of easy to spot, especially if you say to the tool the whatever tool you're using, platform you're using, um, show me the data, show me where you got that,
Mhm.
right? So it's that trust but verify, which is becomes very important. But you're verifying not because you're trying to check the outcomes of artificial intelligence because that's not the value of what it is. You are interrogating your own argument, whatever it is,
Mm. Mm.
and what you're trying to do is you should be the detective. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
your argument, you should think in your head, my argument is guilty until proven truthful.
Yeah.
And if you look at it that way, and you look for the evidence of guilt, you'll find it, you can adjust it, and you can
Mm.
adjust your thinking,
Mm.
and then
Mm.
you get
Mm.
a more authentic version of what you're trying to build.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Thank you. I never looked at it from that perspective, Cliff. That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. It makes perfect sense, and it can be a huge improver of rounding out your own view, your own opinion, but also the facts to support that. You said hallucination, and I know that's the word that is often used and then referred to, but yeah, let me be a bit provocative here and say like it's not a hallucination. Generative AI by default is a creativity tool,
Sure.
right? And creativity not always means that you have to have it always based in um in facts and in grounded reality. You need creativity also to spark new ideas, to go into a greenfield space that you have never been before. And so I think that the hallucinations that many people think of as a necessary evil that is difficult, but we have to somehow rip out. I think it can be a great quality. Again, never take it for granted. Always, ask and qualify. But the ideas that I sometimes get when I see a hallucination, um, I would not get them otherwise. It sparks.
It does. I wrote an article, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 years ago, as generative AI started to come out. I actually called hallucinations a Mandela effect
Mm,
from AI. Seeing something that everyone thinks is there but isn't really, and you're completely right. Like, I've had, um, you know, the Claude and ChatGPT come back with some things that, um, were definitely not true or weren't authentic to what I was trying to build or the outcome I
yeah,
was trying to
yeah,
achieve, but it made me think, like, maybe it should be. Like, I liked that,
fair.
it was sort of like a happy mistake, it's sort of the Mandela effect. Like, it was inferring something in what I was arguing that wasn't really there, and I'm like, "Well, maybe it should be." Right? Let me
Mm,
take that a little bit further. So I agree with you. I think, um, where we don't want it to hallucinate is when we need facts, right? Like, data
yes,
has to be true. So
absolutely.
but
Yeah.
everything else is part of that curation process. Help me think about something that I hadn't thought through. Like, I'll give you a really good example of how I use Gemini 3 Pro, because Gemini 3 Pro is really good at helping me write. I've
Mm,
been writing for years, right? But, so
it's
it's not writing
uh,
for me, but it helps me. I created an editorial boardroom in with Gemini 3 Pro. So every time I write something, I write it, I bring it into Gemini 3 Pro, and I say, Here's my boardroom." It's an editor from Wall Street Journal, from HR executive, from the Atlantic, and from the New York Times. Sometimes I switch them up depending on what I'm writing, but there's 4 editors, and I say, all 4 editors are in a room. They're reading my article, and they're debating the values, merits, and narrative of the article. Tell me what each of them likes or doesn't like based on what their audience would want, and how I
yeah,
can craft something that meets the needs of each of those
yeah,
audiences. And the feedback that it gives me is unreal. And so
yeah.
creating an editorial boardroom that allows me to, like, because I don't have access to those editors, right? And of course, it's making those personas up, but it's making it up based on a ton of available data in the market around those organizations and what they
Yeah,
write, their styles, all those things,
yeah,
and it has helped me refine many of my arguments. It's not making me a better writer per se. It is helping me craft a narrative that's more accurate
yeah.
as a professional writer. Like Jennifer, my,
Like a stronger document.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like my director of communications, is my editor, and I can imagine it could never replace her skill set, but I can go to her with stuff now that feels a
Mm.
little bit more structured in a way that isn't so breaking the fourth wall, as they say, because I
Yeah.
tend to do that because I'm an emotional writer. And just crafting a stronger argument for the subject
Mm.
matter. And so that editorial room that I've created is a great way to do that. I think people understand how to use these tools. They're putting stuff in, they're getting some grammatical things, they maybe get some data. But for me, it's again that interrogation of my ideas.
Coaching.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the most valuable piece of my everyday use of these platforms.
Yeah. I agree, Cliff. This is fantastic, and I have to admit that I use it in a similar kind. I use it also a bit more, right? That probably is not really applicable to you, but as you know, I'm not a native speaker in English, and so I also use it to refine the writing and the grammar because it is much better and that much more polished than I am. So it really helps, and it's in that perspective, it's a great equalizer that helps. I think also many people out there to be more eloquent in written English, which helps because there are many smart people that cannot really express themselves in another language, and English is the language that we chose or was chosen as the international business language.
Yep.
Now, looking a bit further, AI and the HR tech industry. You alluded to this already a few minutes ago, that there might be a shift happening when it comes to HR tech. But um, we both saw the shift from on-premise to cloud technology, and that left a big number of solutions and companies behind, and created a completely new field of companies. Um, Now, I think we both already agree that the shift is similar, if not bigger, from premise to cloud, from cloud to AI. Um, how how do you think about this? What's the perspective that you have when you think about the current industry leaders in the HCM space, like the success factors, the workdays?
Yep.
Um, what's what's your view? Will they continue to dominate? Will they be disrupted? Will we think about this completely different in 2 years from now?
So that's a really big question, and This is where I'm going to be. I'll put my futurist hat on, and
Mm,
I will preface this to say this is my opinion, right? Not even I wouldn't even say this propagates Phenom, but just my opinion based on my
yeah.
interactions and my experience in the HR tech domain. Um, you know, you think of Workdays is probably a really good example. You know, moving from on-prem to cloud, it was just a change in delivery. That's not an innovation. Although
Hmm.
it was a natural progression, and I think at the time, you look at Anil at the time, the
Founder. Yeah.
founder of Workday, who's now been brought back. That's anyone that thinks that that's an innovation, it's not. AI is a real change in cognition, and these big HCM ATS companies, they risk becoming what I call dumb pipes. The plumbing, if they don't evolve into systems of intelligence, they're gonna have a real hard time. I think the HCM,
Uh-huh.
I don't think, that the Workdays of the world are going anywhere anytime soon. But
Hmm.
I called 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago, I was very adamant that within 5 years, this is 5, 6 years ago, that the ATS was gonna die. And
Mm,
we're seeing it, and I gave all the reasons why that was gonna
yeah.
happen. I'm gonna make the same prediction right now that in the next decade, the HCM is gonna be on its way out. I think there's new players coming in that are gonna rethink the way we manage the
We do this.
yeah,
Yeah.
so Workday, I'll say something that I believe to be true. I think Anil is an amazing, executive. Um, I think it's a mistake that they got rid of Carl at Workday. I think there's a war going on inside, between the innovators and, the old guard, and right now the old guard is winning. I think Carl wasn't given enough time, 2 years and, a dozen acquisitions, that it takes way you and I both know it takes way more time to make all of that
Yeah.
native and really cohesive. And in the Workday infrastructure is a mess right now. I don't know that Anil knows how to fix that. He certainly it feels good. And that whole thing was that change of the guard there was driven by investor activists.
Yeah.
It's not in
Yeah.
the best interest of Workday as a platform. So this will be one to watch because I think, their share price has been cut in half. and they're not alone. There's a lot in this
No.
in this
Yeah.
industry that go into this.
Whole SaaS industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think are they too big to fail right now? Probably. But that doesn't mean that they're going to scale and innovate either.
Yeah.
Look at what happened to Connexa Brass Ring, right? That thing bounced around like a hot potato, and now it's just dying on the vine. And this is what happens when you can't change your infrastructure.
Yeah.
How new Workday is, or SuccessFactors, and SuccessFactors is clearly an enormous failure. Otherwise, it wouldn't have bought Smart Recruiters, and I don't think that's going to be the right move either. You really want me to go deep on this stuff. It's all a mistake,
Yeah.
and it's not innovation. It's a knee jerk reaction to your share price, and that's not how you innovate in this industry. And so that's going to be a challenge for a while, but they're not going anywhere. But I would question any organization that chooses to deeply invest in their HCM infrastructure versus investing in applied AI right now. You still need to
Mm,
maintain that, but I'm talking about the long-term future is not in 30-year-old technology.
yeah. No, I agree, Cliff. And it's I'm with you on this one, right? The fear that is clearly out there is, will SuccessFactors, will Workday become the SAP HCM of today, right? It's still there, but it's dead. Some companies have difficulties getting away from it, but it's dead and it will not get you any further. Yeah, and one way of dealing with this is being crazy in acquisitions and figuring out how to do this. But um, as you said, this does not feel or sound like it is going into a cohesive future, and it doesn't sound like there's a clear plan on where this is going. But then, thinking this further, if they are disrupted, who disrupts them? Will there be um, new HR startups, tech startups, AI startups, or will everyone just, vibe code their own HR application? Who will be the disruptor?
Yeah. I think you're gonna see a combination. I think you see startups um, that are coming into the market looking at the problem from a different angle. It's kind of like the analogy I like to use for this. When I think about startups in HR tech is, years ago, whether you're playing American football or international football, soccer, the coaches, used to be on the field with the players. So they're looking at everything at
Mhm.
eye level. And now they're up in the stands. They'll call it the press box area. Like they're looking down, and
Yeah,
the vision is different. You can see
yeah,
things moving and progressing,
yeah,
differently. And so
yeah.
startups look at that. I think that the bigger enterprise ERP systems are on the field because I don't know that they know how to get up into the stands. And even if they got up there, I don't know
Uh,
that they know what they're looking at. So startups, they come at this with fresh eyes like we did, like Phenom did 15 years ago. We said, why can't the talent experience be more like e-commerce? Personalized,
mm,
automated, it gets to know me. I have interactions, I get access, I'm in control. I make decisions based on awesome
yeah.
data, right? Like, so we changed it. And then we had a bunch of really great other startups follow us into this category. And there are hundreds of us now, which is awesome. So I do think the ideas and innovations are going to come from startups and even from phenoms of the world, as not startups anymore, but as maturing in this space.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but I don't think vibe coding is vibe code. I vibe code, right? Vibe coding is awesome. It's great for the weekend projects. It's great to build a conceptual product or service,
Prototype.
right? Just kind of
Yeah,
test
and
it a little bit,
it's
stress
really
test it,
great.
but that's
Yes.
not
Yeah.
enterprise is about building applied AI,
Mm.
and that's a scientific, validated, defensible way of doing things. And so there I do think, so startups are driving innovation, but I also think in partner with that, there are some companies that potentially could really, flip the HCM world on its head. And I look at companies like a ServiceNow, even Salesforce. as they start to
Sure.
dip their toes into these waters and understand that the human capital experience can be fixed, it can be profitable for them, it can
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
meaningful for
Yeah.
their users and for the audience, and because they look at this lens very, very differently. Um,
Yeah.
Even Microsoft, Microsoft owns, they're the second largest owner of this space, you know,
Cliff,
so like,
honestly,
we'll see.
I I hear you, and now it's my time to say I wrote this like 3 years ago that Microsoft has it all in their hands to come up with the HR technology of the future.
Yep.
They haven't, and they won't. They will not get their act together.
Yeah.
They never have. You know,
They're a little
that's a bit
comfortable with
unfortunate.
their current revenue stream, their revenue model to take the risk, and that's where, I love Satya a lot. I think he's an amazing operator and even from an innovation standpoint, but that's a hard ship to, the way I
Yeah.
describe that is like Microsoft is like 12, massive, cargo ships that
True.
you have to coordinate in different parts of the world, moving in the same direction at the same time, all in sync in completely different conditions. It is
True.
so hard to do. So I can empathize with how difficult that might be, but I agree with you. I think Microsoft has all the tools available to them. It's just the desire to do it.
Yeah. Let's look at this from a bit of a different angle, Cliff, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You could also argue, instead of becoming slowly obsolete, there's a humongous new market for the HCM players.
Yep.
It's services, right? Today, there are the companies like Genpact, like Accenture, etc., that build huge shared service centers, BPO centers, to deliver HR services on platforms like Workday, like Phenom, etc. But what about replacing those humans with AI agents? Right? That's a huge new market.
Yep.
And this is something where the Workdays or SAPs could actually benefit from, right? If they are building those agents, then their potential is growing significantly.
Yeah. The challenge that, again, the large, um, established, companies in that space, they have a data modeling problem.
Mm.
How they have collected, stored, cataloged, and labeled data over the years is
Mm.
completely misaligned with applied AI and with agents. And in order to really get that right, you'd have to completely re-architect their data modeling. I wrote about this. Anyone can look it up on my LinkedIn. In fact, I commented to, one of the leaders at Deloitte had just commented about this, and I kind of reposted my article on why the data modeling it is the question to ask, because
Mhm,
it's not
mhm,
about
mhm.
just delivering, an agent that does something. You have to be able to gain new intelligence from that experience. And I'll give you a really good example. We built a screening agent that helps recruiters do screening. And so the success of this has been something we couldn't have even imagined, honestly.
Mhm.
So it basically, instead of the recruiter making a phone call, the agent makes the phone call, and it establishes that it's an agent. And what's
Yeah,
funny is
yeah, yeah.
we actually made it sound more like an agent than a person on purpose. We found
Yeah,
there's a level there that's important, so that
yeah.
and it does announce itself that it's an agent. But what happens is people actually liked it more. They liked getting the call from the agent and having that conversation and having that data go into the system, and the recruiter, instead of the recruiter
Interesting.
making phone calls, they're analyzing the intelligence and saying, "Okay, I'm gonna make the
Yeah,
decision who gets the next step. That screening was great.
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
invite you to an interview," or something like that, like whatever
yeah,
that looks like.
yeah.
But that's what we found. In order to build that infrastructure, you can't just have an agent making phone calls. It does not work that way.
Mhm, mhm.
There's an entire data model behind this and how the system works, gathers that intelligence, presents it not only to the candidate, but to the recruiter, the hiring manager, the leader, so that it makes sense and understands what the possible next steps are.
Yeah,
And giving confidence. But the most important thing is defensibility. We have to be able to defend these technologies. They must be transparent. And what I can tell you, a couple big legal cases. I won't comment on the veracity of any of those legal cases, but you're going to see more of them. They are challenging the transparency piece and the
Uh,
ability of the individual to control that experience and understand actually what's happening. And this is where HCMs have really big challenges because their systems aren't built to be transparent to the outside user. And that's going to be
uh,
the challenge that they face. And so, but data integrity
uh,
is by far the question everyone should be asking. Don't tell me what your agent does. Show me what it does through data. And
yeah.
if that makes sense to you, right, then I would say that whoever that vendor is probably pretty credible. And that's the
Mm.
direction I would go. So I think they have talk about innovation. I think they have a really
Mm.
long, tumultuous journey uphill at a 45-degree angle in terrible weather. It's like climbing Mount Everest without oxygen. Like, I wish them the best of luck. But look behind the curtain. Don't look at
Yeah,
the polished consumer or business delivery layer, the UI UX. You got to get behind that technology
yeah.
and make sure that it's rock solid and defensible.
And I think, Cliff, this is more important today and even more important tomorrow than it has ever been. You must really understand what you buy, otherwise you will face difficulties sooner rather than later. And yeah, that's then on you. And it's not only that you might have invested in a product that you cannot use anymore, but it's all about reputation as
Yep.
well. And it's your reputation, not the vendors or providers' reputation. It's your reputation as a company and as a leader in that company.
Yeah. And by
And
the way, it shouldn't
so this
stop
is really
you.
important.
I mean, I talk to lawyers every day. I'm not a lawyer. Make that very, very clear. But I think what they look for is that defensibility piece. They're
Yeah,
not looking
defensibility,
to
transparency.
not adopt the technologies. They're like,
Hmm.
just show us that we can defend what we're doing because you can't stop someone from suing you. Like, especially here in America, my goodness, like, if you swing it in
Let's
the
not
wrong
go there.
direction, you can get a lawsuit. But like stopping it early is really
Yeah,
is what's important. It's saying, yeah, anyone
yeah,
can file a lawsuit and say something happened, but if I can prove in that first or second step that that's not true, then we've mitigated that risk. And then and this is so new, you're going to see lots of lawsuits. It's just going to happen.
yeah,
It's because there's a
of
lack of
course.
regulatory here, at least in the US. So the EU is a little bit better with EUAI in terms of that, but you're going to see this happen. We will get through this. I
Mm,
promise you, we will get through this. Um, this sort of litigious, knee-jerk reaction to what's happening, and we will be better for it. The companies that will be better are the ones that are looking at defensibility and transparency right
mm,
now and saying, "We're gonna
yeah,
build that into our platform," if they haven't already. Phenom, we've done
yeah.
that since day one. We've had defensibility and transparency in the platform forever. And
Yeah.
and a number of our other, I'll call them co-opetition, as a friend of mine, founder of Paradox, Aaron, used to say, and
Mm.
he's right. A lot of us in this space are thinking of that defensibility and transparency and already build
Mm.
it in. So look for that, like go to that
Yeah.
and bring your
Yeah.
legal in early,
Yeah.
so that they can understand what you're doing. Like they make them a part of the conversation.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, Cliff. Couldn't agree more. Cliff, we have one problem. Time flies when you have
Time.
fun.
Yeah.
So I think I really enjoyed the conversation so far, but I have to slowly come to an end to respect your time commitment. But maybe two questions at the end. Let's go back to specifically recruiting
Sure.
and with everything that you see and what you maybe can share about the future or cannot yet share about the future, what you're working on. How will recruiting look in 2 to 3 years from now, from a candidate's perspective, from a recruiter perspective, from a hiring manager perspective? Different, the same, what will
Yeah,
change?
it's gonna change, and it should change, by the way. This is how we evolve to a greater state of amplifying human value everywhere in this process. But recruiters themselves, I think that title will change. The role is gonna change and become far more strategic than it ever has.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
would
mhm, mhm.
say, most of the process, especially for high volume roles, is going to be,
Yeah.
autonomous but supervised. We're moving
Mhm,
towards more of a zero touch recruiting in that space. Machine identifies screens and schedules, does that stuff. Humans enter the process. and they'll do a decision-making check and have final
Mm-hmm.
negotiation, those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if a recruiter is still manually screening resumes in 2028, man, I don't know. That company won't exist very long. Like, you have to put recruiters into like being more of talent architects. I'll give you
Yeah.
a super quick. A new role that I'm predicting is coming is the talent revenue engineer, where they're helping
Mm.
the organization identify revenue generating roles or revenue maintaining roles, people that touch
Mm-hmm.
revenue,
Mm-hmm.
everything from sales to customer service to even developing product and service and marketing, and really concentrating on how we make that experience better, how we hire the
Mm-hmm.
right people, and how do we really scale? Because here's the saying: the AI, the first layer is efficiency, of course,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But efficiency does what I call revealed opportunities. So you become really efficient.
Mm.
It's going to reveal opportunities. Again, going to that bird's eye view on things, revealed opportunities that will then go to phase two, which is, if efficiency is finite, because it will be,
Yeah. It
revenue
will.
is
Yeah.
infinite. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
revealed opportunities turns into revealed outcomes. Something we didn't know, we became more efficient. Now we know it. Now we can flip that and create a revenue opportunity for the company. Companies that make more money hire more people. They deliver more services and products to the
Mm-hmm.
rest of us, and that's the saying, right? Efficiency is finite, revenue is infinite, and that's where the real thing that's going to happen with recruiting is going to transform to.
Very interesting. I'm looking forward to this future.
Me too.
I like this direction. The more of the talent architect,
Yeah. Well, by the
the
way,
revenue focus. Yeah.
real quick, if you're in talent right now, there's more headcount coming your way. That's my really big prediction. Like the talent, performance
Interesting. That's
development,
a hot take.
learning and development, and compensation will grow in headcount. HR generalist will shrink to next to nothing.
Wow. That's a very hot take. Cliff, you're coming very late with that hot
Yeah,
take. We don't
sorry.
have time to go
I had
into
to
this
tease you
time.
for that. I
We
want you to
have
have
to.
me back. We can talk about it.
Exactly. I think I have to. I think I have to.
There you go.
Final question
Yep.
for today. Coming back to the today. What's the 3 biggest challenges that you currently see in front of you, and how do you go about them?
The first is AI fluency. You got to build fluency around artificial
Mhm.
intelligence organization. It starts with a culture change,
Mhm.
lowering the fear level that this is going to take your job. It's not. So that's the big thing. But I would say leaders are making $1 million decisions based on 10-cent understanding of technology. Leaders are the worst at understanding technology. They are.
Yeah.
Kelly Jones, I'm going to give you an example. I promise you it's not just me saying it, although I know it's true. Kelly Jones at Cisco, they did an AI transformation. She published it. It's in her blog. It's publicly available. Cisco is a client of
Yeah.
Phenoms.
Yeah.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll give all the full disclosures here. But they did this, and they said director and above was their biggest challenge in understanding fluency of artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
Manager and below were adopting it like crazy, and really and that kind of makes sense, especially if it's generational. And look it up. It's a really good study. But I would say
Yeah.
leaders are the biggest problem. Your frontline employees, they want this, they want to do it. You got it. Just help them get there. The second thing is
Yeah.
that data integrity piece that we talked about, right? AI is a mirror. If your data is garbage, your AI output will be highly
You're
efficient
screwed.
garbage.
You're lost. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're lost.
by far. And
Yeah.
then my last thing is we've got to close the intent to execution gap. So everyone wants skills-based hiring, but they don't have applied AI to validate the skills at scale, what I talked about earlier.
Mhm.
It's not
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
about skills, it's about verified outcomes of skills and pitch it moving more towards the work blueprint, whatever you want to call it. I call it work blueprint in transforming how we look at that is what's going to advance organizations.
Thank you, Cliff.
Thank you for having me,
Fantastic.
Volker.
That's a really interesting view into the future, a really interesting view around today, and I think a lot to take out of this. I will take a few things with me definitely to think further through. And yeah, honestly, you teased at the end, so you have to come back. There's no way around
I
that.
will. Well, if you want a really good teaser, self-promotion, shameless, by the way, I wrote an article called Liberating Talent, and that is
Mm.
moving the talent organization outside of HR. I think it's time.
Is it on your
It's on my
LinkedIn profile?
LinkedIn under my newsletter called
Perfect.
my newsletter is called The Uncomfortable Truth, and that is certainly one of them.
Perfect. I'll definitely link this. Cliff, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed the conversation. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Volker.